As all this hostile noise swirled around him and the playpen where he works, an otherwise quiet Kyrie Irving came out of the shadows only to try to correct the sports industrial complex on a couple of things. First, he tweeted at Stephen A. Smith saying, "You're going to have to explain yourself to people in your generation. I'm not around many 50-plus-year-olds that speak and act like you do, so this is new to me." And in response to Barstool profiting off T-shirts that place Kyrie's name with Putin, ISIS, and Kim Jong-un, he added, "NBA champion and gold medalist. Just thought the statement needed a correction as y'all continue to make money off my name." Stephen A. responded by challenging him to a debate, because of course he did. Barstool responded by adding NBA champion and gold medalist below the names of Putin, ISIS, and Kim Jong-un. Kyrie cannot win this fight, obviously, because we have him so very outnumbered. And the entitlement of fans and media that keep calling him entitled is as great as his own, though we were far less skilled and graceful in earning it than he was. We will snuff him out at every angle, no matter how much humanity he requests and no matter how politely he asks. And we will feel entitled to do it because, like an angry citizen telling a cop we pay his taxes, our passion, no matter how unreasonable, is what funds Kyrie, Stephen A., and Barstool. We feel more entitled to our bad behavior than Irving is to his, even though his skill level is vastly more rare and valuable than our passion. Our need for content will always usurp his need for content. This is not meant as a defense of Kyrie, by the way. His behavior in nuking 3 consecutive successful blueprints is not quite defensible in what we've made of this workplace. But I would like to examine his request, since it is about the only time we've heard his voice amid this cacophony of angry noise he birthed. He's requesting we think differently about how we treat people like him, and our response is to mock and tell him to fuck all the way off. He's trying to sage sports of some spiritual impurities, and we laugh maniacally in his face and tell him he's the crazy one. But he's not exactly wrong that it is odd for a 50-plus-year-old adult to scream for days on television about how someone a quarter century his junior dribbles a basketball. He isn't exactly wrong that we probably shouldn't be profiting by putting his name anywhere near Putin's. In a vacuum, he's probably closer to right in objecting to the indecency of those things than we are in profiting off of them. But he doesn't work in a vacuum, does he? No, he works in the most insanely emotional escape fantasy land there is, a place where it's normal for a grown man to pay $130 for the privilege of wearing his name on their back as a part of their identity. We don't do this for, Tom Hanks, so we aren't going to really hear him above our jeering laughter. We think we care more about basketball than he does, and that's offensive to us as fans, even though it ignores that it can in no way be possibly true. You don't get that kind of good at basketball at his size not caring about it. You don't make the biggest shot in the history of that sport or have the greatest handles we've ever seen by being flippant about your craftsmanship. But it is much easier and more fun to tell him to change his behavior than it is to modify or even examine our own. Ours has been normalized through hecklers and booing and sports radio and debate television. Raining down poisonous judgment upon the entertainer is part of the construct where we work now, accepted, filed under our passion even though we might call this kind of love dysfunctional or even abusive in other kinds of relationships. We care deeply about movies, but Tom Cruise doesn't get this if he's unreliable about showing up for work. The 24-hour channels for music are there to, play or celebrate music. I know that MTV doesn't actually do much music anymore, but the programming there and around Skip Bayless can both be described as ridiculousness. So Kyrie has to treat his workplace with more respect, according to us. But does he? Yeah, of course, we want him to, but does he really? Because he's an employee who keeps getting rewarded by always getting what he wants, even as he fails to show up for work. He just opted in for $36.5 million. We should all have such options. He recouped more than double all the money he lost last year in choosing not to get vaccinated. There aren't many people criticizing him who can get away with doing that to an employer. He began the smearing of his name by jilting LeBron, but now a desperate LeBron is more than willing to welcome him back. Kyrie will make more this year than Joel Embiid and Devin Booker. In other words, for what he did last year, for contributions in creating one of the most embarrassing franchise collapses we've ever seen, he just got a $3 million annual raise. Irving, who just turned 30, is one of the sad faces Adam Silver can point to when he talks about how unhappy his young players seem. They seem to have a different relationship with work than Stephen A. does, that generation, but there has always been a disconnect between the older people who cover sports and the younger people who play them. Kyrie views himself as an artist, philosopher, and like Ben Stiller's Apple TV show Severance, he spent last season asking if perhaps our relationship with work is too lopsided, too irrational. He isn't wrong in requesting more decency at the circus. He's just a fool if he expects in any way to get it. Never mind the mental health crisis facing young people in the social media age, or the conversation Kevin Love and DeMar DeRozan tried to initiate about it. All Kyrie will ever get from us in the conditional love workplace of sports is the passion. Compassion? That appears to be a bridge too far. You want to be treated more humanely, Kyrie? We're going to make you work for it. And then remind you loudly that you're the one who's entitled, selfish, and wrong.